Turn on the AC. It's Angel Caruso.
Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at the movies of 1989, taking a look month by month and exploring which movies dominated the box office in the year of the sequel.
Things happen. Someone has to deal with it. And who are you going to call?
This entire video is to study the entire year and try and figure out what was going on with the choices and the reasoning of the release dates of each film that came out in 1989. So, if the cinema ticket is $3.97, how many times can a family go to the cinemas? How many times can they go to the cinema and re-watch a movie?
And who are you going to call?
So, if the cinema ticket was $3.97, then the average salary in the USA, this is only for the USA, was $20,000 per year. That's per individual. The theatres knew that. There was no internet. There was only word of mouth, commercials on TV, magazines and newspapers. That was the only way, and billboards, that you would get to see that new movies were coming out. The most powerful way was trailers at the cinemas. That way you would get a glimpse of what was going to be coming out. So everybody in 1988 will have seen a trailer of some sort for the big movies that came out in 1989. So this is what I want to explore. Why did some of them succeed and why did some of them fail? So we're going to study from January 1989. So for the first month during January, the box office was dominated by the 1988 hit Rain Man, starring Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman.
Mess with your brother?
I don't know about you, but I'm starting to feel a little silly.
What else did you do?
Kiss Susanna.
Did you enjoy kissing a woman?
I don't know.
How was that?
Wet.
Dustin Hoffman, Tom Cruise, in a Barry Levinson film.
I like having you for my brother. I'm an excellent driver.
I still remember when Beaches came out. Starring Bette Midler and Barbara Hershey, this tearjerker was passed around women like there was no tomorrow. Not a single woman that I knew at this time could watch this film without crying. Three Fugitives, starring Martin Short and Nick Nolte.
Everybody! Hands up! Hands up! Stick them up! This is a holdup! Stick them up! Money business. You know, if I drop this thing, it's gonna go off. Move it! Take this. Freeze!
This grossed $14 million and was released on the 27th of January, so right at the end. So a lot of that money that made will have come from February's profits.
The Titanic just arrived.
Okay, and then next, released in 1988, we've got Mississippi Burning with $34 million.
Make it look so easy. He made a short speech as the bulldozer buried the kid. Blow for the white man. Is that what you said, Clinton? Townley and Ray Stuckey, they were... I'm sorry.
Starring Gene Hackman and William Dafoe. This movie kind of goes under the radar when you think of 1989. In fact, all of these movies do. Beaches actually came out in 88, but like I said, they were running during January, so we have to discuss them.
Who are you going to call?
Other movies to mention: The Accidental Tourist, which grossed a total of $32 million and was released December 23rd, 1988.
Who's a perfect couple?
And then the low-budget movie The January Man with Kevin Kline, released January 13th. This was all in the month of January, when money is tight and people tend to usually spend less on luxuries like cinema visits. So to conclude my analysis of January, Rain Man comes out victor, coming out in December of 88, but dominating the box office of January 1989. Other movies worth mentioning that were released in December of 88, which dominated, was Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito.
I have a brother? My name is Julius. I'm your twin brother.
The moment I sat down, I thought I was looking into a mirror.
Only their mother can tell them apart.
Then there is the hit comedy, I don't see the appeal with this one, Working Girl, but it made a lot of money during January. It was the third most, highest grossing of January. Then in fourth place was The Naked Gun.
He's Lieutenant Frank Drebin.
Whatever scum did this, not one man on this force will...
Other movies: Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Oliver and Company, Tequila Sunrise, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, The Land Before Time, Scrooged, which had its run in '88 but continued into January, making $7 million, Hellbound Hellraiser 2, and Ernest Saves Christmas. February 1989. Week on week, the popular reviews of Rain Man continue its dominance throughout the most of February. Movies that try and smash it from the #1 spot was the anticipated sequel, The Fly 2, starring Daphne Zuniga and Eric Stoltz. This was released February 10th, with the intention of guys and girls to go and see it for Valentine's Day. If you want to see more facts on The Fly 2, I've already made a review on this recently. If you want to watch this, the link is on the top right of the screen right now. Other contenders are the comedies Hair Alibi, starring Tom Selleck, and the cult classic The Burbs, starring Tom Hanks and Bruce Dern.
Welcome to Mayfield Place. A typical street in the burbs.
In this role, Tom Hanks plays Ray Peterson, a suburban homeowner who's obsessed with proving that his neighbours are murderers. This movie did okay, but was released on the same day as Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Bill and Ted's
Excellent! Excellent!
Excellent Adventure.
Party on, dude.
A movie about two adorable losers still at high school trying to pass a history exam. This style of movie had not been done before, however The Burbs has vibes taken from Fright Night, another movie from 1985 of a neighbour trying to prove that his next door neighbour is a killer, or in this case, a vampire. The cinema goer still kinda hooked on Tom Hanks' performances in Big, which was released in 1988, had many choices when they purchased a cinema ticket. Everybody was going to the cinemas in February 1989. With so many movies to choose from and genres, we had successes from more serious tone classics like the hit movie Dangerous Liaisons, starring Glenn Close, John Malkovich, Michelle Pfeiffer, Keanu Reeves and Uma Thurman. Even with all these classics, America was still going to see Rain Man, and Rain Man stayed victorious during the month of February in 1989. Which movie could knock it from the top spot? Three Fugitives came in second place and Beaches in third. Nothing in February could knock these three movies out of the park. Comedy and serious drama was king. Horror was dying 1,000 deaths, and you could feel the downward spiral that the box office was taking for such movies. If we only think back to the year before with the release of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, it had seemed that horror had reached its pinnacle, and everything after was a fall from its popularity with the masses. The horror world was saturated. Cinema viewers had become bored, seeing their favourite slashers in Part 5, 6 or 7. The trend was comedy, and it was on full cylinders clearing up the box offices. The reason? A light-hearted comedy could grab younger audiences. Home video becoming more and more widespread meant that these captured moments in time could be shared with families and friends alike. Not having to hide on a night to watch them secretly away from your kids, this meant that theatres could capitalise on this. With no internet or online video gaming, the theatre in February 1989 was a good place to socialise and to be entertained. March 1989. Finally, something that knocks Rain Man from the top spot, placing Rain Man at number 2 at the box office. We get the hit movie Lean on Me.
When a school becomes a battleground, you need a principal who's ready for war.
Call me Batman!
From the director of Rocky and the Karate Kid, Lean on Me.
Now playing at a theater near you. Consult local listings.
Directed by John Avildsen. Not even close to making as much as Rain Man did, March being a slow month with movies from the previous Christmas still being in the top 10. Eclipsing movies like The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. With an all-star cast and a whopping $46 million budget, this movie bombed so hard, making only a total of $8 million back at the theatres.
I'll give you a bottle of wine.
Bring it straight to me. Righto.
There is not a lot to say about the month of March for cinema, but you can tell the big movie studios were saving their gold mines for the summer. And each movie seen throughout all of these months were getting the moviegoers pumped for what was in store for that summer period at the box office. Another sequel starring Chevy Chase was the hit movie Fletch Lives.
How about lunch at the In-N-Out Burger?
Fletch, answer your phone.
In-N-Out Burger, may I take your order, please?
Taking the number 3 spot just below Rain Man. Starring Chevy Chase and made on an incredibly low budget for 1989, Fletch Lives walked away with a whopping $20 million in its first month of release, finishing with a total of $35 million at the domestic box office. Other desperate sequels were the predictable unfunny Cash Cow, which was approaching its limit in 1989, with the god-awful Police Academy 6.
Crime Lord is getting inside information. Could be anyone.
Making us look like a bunch of fools.
Now, man.
That was very exciting.
Police Academy 6. City under siege.
I believe the studios knew that they had to get their duds out in this month, anticipating the buzz of what was to come.
Who are you gonna call?
Another movie entering the top 10 was the Robert Downey Jr. Failure, which was Chances Are. Now, this made a lot of money when it first came out, but soon dropped off and was pushed out of the top 10, pretty sharpishly. April 1989. Springtime. The nights are getting lighter. We get a couple of new entries at number 1 and number 2. And guess what? Rain Man is still number 3 in the charts. It is April. This movie came out in December 1988. The world was crazy for Rain Man. But at number 1 we get the successful baseball movie
Major League.
Now across the seas we do not care about baseball, so domestically speaking this movie did excellent. With a mere budget of $11 million, this movie made $49 million just the USA, grossing a total of $64 million worldwide. Rain Man, however, totaled a gross of $172 million in the USA. It fought off so many entries and continues to be watched throughout of April of 1989. I wonder how many women and men went to see this just for Tom Cruise, and how many times they went to see it. He was hot property after the success of Top Gun. Movies such as Cyborg, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, the low-budget thriller Dead Calm, starring Billy Zane, Nicole Kidman and Sam Neill, in this tense out-at-sea boating drama. Van Damme was not the only foreign muscle to have a stab at cracking the theatrical releases. Dolph Lundgren stars in Red Scorpion.
In Rocky IV, he fought for his country. Now, Dolph Lundgren is taking off his gloves. An entire army. One man at a time. His one mistake meant a death sentence. Their one mistake was not finishing the job. First he was their weapon. Now he's their punishment. Dolph Lundgren. Red Scorpion.
Already a big name, but without the acting ability or attributes and talents of Van Damme, the 1989 movie Red Scorpion hit theatres in the month of April. Being destroyed by the popularity of Jean-Claude, people were thirsty to see more from the muscles from Brussels. So Red Scorpion took home a small, presumably a profit, with a taking of $4.2 million. Cyborg took $9 to $10 million on a budget of $500,000. I cannot find the budget of Red Scorpion, but I assume it would be around about that. The movie that came in second for the month of April, but outdid Major League in its overall takings, was the Stephen King adaptation Pet Sematary. I said horror was dead, but this was an exception. Now, this is a movie that needs talking about and is worth mentioning.
I have just created something totally illogical.
Field of Dreams, starring Kevin Costner. This movie grossed barely anything in April, released on April 21st, 1989. This movie with positive reviews and excellent word of mouth went on to take a huge chunk of the profits throughout of May. But we will get to that part. Other titles released in April were K9, a cop and dog story starring James Belushi. House 3, which is a soft horror and did terribly on its opening.
And stayed that way.
Falling sharpishly is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but still staying in the top 10 for April. The movie theatres are saturated with new releases and have had so many movies to choose from that a lot of these just naturally flopped. May 1989. With a fairly steady May growing week on week of more movies added to the theatres, we get such new entries like the movie Roadhouse, starring Patrick Swayze as the bouncer who stands for no trouble at the bar that he works at.
Patrick Swayze is Dalton. I thought you'd be bigger.
Opinions vary.
This movie is now a cult classic and is loved and adored for its over-the-top cheesiness. It inspired a remake which I am not going to talk about as it's an insult to the original.
You mind if I smoke?
Oh. No, not at all. Please do. You?
Got it, thanks. I'd kill for a cup of coffee.
Instant? Be all right? Drink a lot of this during finals, you know? Gotta stay up all night.
You remind me of someone.
Is that Charlie Cassidy?
No, that's my cousin. This guy had a mouth like yours, good lips. And he knew how to use them. Do you know how to use your lips, Charlie?
Surprisingly, the release of Fright Night 2 goes almost unnoticed. The first one was a huge hit and this one has flown so far under the radar that it scoops a disappointing 1 million at the box office. I guess people were sick of vampires in 1989. After all the other movies that came before it, the likes of The Lost Boys and Near Dark in 1987, people didn't want to see this sequel ultimately, and after its entire run it walked away with a disastrous taking, just shy of 3 million domestically. With a budget of 8 million, this was a huge flop and caused the franchise to end at just 2 movies. Poor decision making due to the murder of the head of distribution, Jose Menendez. Still, to this very day, it is a very sought after movie, having been out of print since 2003. Anyways, enough of talking Fright Night. Other movies that were released in May was the hugely disappointed Weird Acid Trip, Earth Girls Are Easy, starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis again, and introducing Jim Carrey as a side character. This film could not see the light of day with theatre ticket sales and walked away with a mere 3 million in total, disappearing from theatres faster than a bullet. The reason for this is simple. We are getting the third instalment, The Last Crusade. Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade promised to take Indiana back to what people loved him against, the Nazis. With the addition of Sean Connery playing his father, Indiana Jones swiped the box office in May, with Field of Dreams in a close second, in a month dominated by few new entries and the remainder of the Christmas rush. There literally was something for everyone in the month of May. Rain Man still clings on to the number 9 spot at the box office. One movie to mention, which isn't technically a sequel but is a movie starring Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. For some reason this duo just kept going in this bizarre movie, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, in which Gene Wilder plays a deaf man and Richard Pryor plays a blind man. The two somehow managed to become friends and go on a wild adventure together. Also, a movie that was released in March but barely got a mention is Heathers, starring Christine Slater. I never mentioned this in March because it barely touched the box office, but it's still straggling on. This is another movie which has a high score on IMDb due to its themes and content. It has critical acclaim, however it did nothing at the box office in terms of real profits. So with May out of the way, we are leading to June 1989. Wow, what an explosive summer of movies the world got. Where do I even start? So dominating the box office still is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It comes out victor. However, so many new arrivals come to take the hot spot. Tim Burton classic Batman is released.
Gonna be rad.
Really? What's rad?
Radical.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
And kids aren't the only ones experiencing holy cow syndrome. The older generation has been keeping this McKinney Avenue Bat Gallery pretty busy. Old movie marquees, Batman miniatures, buttons, and yes, comic books are going like Batcades.
Batman's become hip and cool, and people can come out of the closet and admit that they read Batman and that comics are in vogue now.
Theater employees will probably clean up in overtime this weekend. People have been trying to buy tickets now since early this morning. So as the fever builds, Batman is already in the bag, retailers say, and if the movie's a hit or not may not even matter. Now, Batman will open in some 2,000 theaters nationwide this weekend, and considering all the money they spent on the hype, the movie producers are hoping that they too can scream holy cow, that is, when the box office receipts are totaled. Larry Mullins, Channel 5 News, at a theater near you.
The anticipation of seeing The Dark Knight brought to Hollywood was no more. The queues were around the block, the advertising, the commercials and the TV spots. Merchandise was everywhere. The world was back crazy. Excellent reviews had people plough to the theatres multiple times to see the magic Tim Burton had brought to life. This was darker than the Richard Donner Superman we had once known. This was a dangerous version of Batman, twisted with guilt and revenge for what had happened to his parents. This dark, gothic, broody comic book movie released June 23rd comes in second place to Indiana. Not to mention the highly anticipated sequel, Ghostbusters II.
And who are you gonna call?
Unfortunately, this movie was an almost carbon copy of the first, and people felt robbed by such a weak attempt at a sequel.
And who are you gonna call?
Batman dominates. This is definitely the month of the sequel, as The Karate Kid Part 3 is released June 30th.
We use mother? Maybe.
Say it, Cobra Kai.
Never dies.
Bet your ass.
This is one of my favourite movies of 1989, but I can see why it got destroyed by its competitors, with the likes of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
It was a quiet Saturday morning. Professor Wayne Zielinski was hard at work on his new invention. That didn't quite work. Then something quite unexpected happened. It shrunk the kids. Rick Moranis is Professor Wayne Zielinski.
Right, honey?
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
Captain, I do not think you realize the gravity of your situation.
Which sadly again suffered, as every one of its usual special effects teams were busy working on other projects like Ghostbusters II.
And who are you gonna call?
So many special effects in the year 1989, so many sequels. Quietly taking its share of the box office is this classic Dead Poets Society, a more grown-up, less glamorised movie, less octane. Robin Williams' classic. It showed that the audiences could all be pleased all at the same time. All those franchises and memorabilia from 1989 that will have fueled cinema goers to go back to see more really worked in terms of gearing people up for the next few months. The trailers for July and August must have been amazing. July 1989, the kids are off school. Batman is under attack from a barrage of other entries in the month of July. The highly anticipated sequel Lethal Weapon 2 hits theaters July 7th.
Almost time. Are we taking this? Drop the table. You too, Martin.
Then unplug it.
Hey, Nick, that's your sister.
Hey, the picture looks perfectly right. Yeah.
Do I know you?
Yes, you did, sir.
With a more violent turn compared to the family-friendly Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the box office replied with high ticket sales. The combination of Mel Gibson and Danny Glover continues perfectly here. I still think Lethal Weapon 2 is my favourite, with Mel Gibson in full swing as the crazy cop Martin Riggs. I wonder if Warner Brothers had released this in the month of March, if they would have made even more money with this franchise. Putting it up there against Batman was a huge risk, but one that paid off. Together combined in the month of July, they made over $200 million together. Not bad for just 2 movies in a month which had many other great releases too, with the second movie of the year starring a cop and a dog. Only this time it is with the popular Tom Hanks in the movie Turner and Hooch, rather than James Belushi. Released July 28th, but raking in more than the 8th entry into the Friday the 13th franchise, Jason Takes Manhattan. In this one, the tired concept is stretched even further with the false promise that Jason is roaming the streets of Manhattan. Fact is, it's set on a boat 90% of the movie. You barely see any scenes in the Big Apple due to its costing too much to film there. A contributing factor to why horror was dying is nobody put any effort in trying something new. Unless it was a Stephen King adaptation, the death of horror was apparent. Why release a Jason movie in the summer anyway? Why not wait until October, in the Halloween season? I have no idea of this. Remember when I said comedy was king? I was right. With the release of Weekend at Bernie's, the concept of 2 guys pushing around a dead guy to make him look like he's hosting a party is a bold and hilarious attempt at bringing a comedy situation to life and pushing the boundaries of what we like to laugh at. They do it perfectly here, raking in $21 million in the month of July. It finished just behind the new entry that was again for adults, When Harry Met Sally.
Men and women can't be friends, because no man can be friends with a woman that he finds attractive.
Man can be friends with a woman he finds unattractive.
No, you pretty much want to nail him too.
If you wanted to get away from special effects and feel a heartwarming romantic comedy, Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal took a huge slice of the cinema pie. Released July 14th and taking away $23 million in the month of July. Now, a movie worth mentioning that was re-released during the summer months by Disney was the re-release of the animated Peter Pan.
Walt Disney Pictures presents
Peter Pan!
Encouraging families with young children to get out to the theatres, this was money for old rope in terms of profits for Disney. Their main focus was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which during the month of July took an incredible $66 million. They also made Turner and Hooch, so July was a busy time for Disney and Warner Brothers. Falling sharpishly was Field of Dreams, sandwiched between 2 newcomers.
You see this hand? It makes $5,000 a night. You see this one?
Great Balls of Fire and Do the Right Thing. One surprising release is the second outing for Timothy Dalton in the sequel, License to Kill.
this private.
Released with a higher age certification, many believe this one was too violent for a James Bond movie, and the profits suffered from this decision, as people were not ready for a rogue 00 agent with this revenge in his heart quite yet. Released July 14th and taking its share, if be it low, of $23 million. The impact of Timothy Dalton's violence just wasn't enough to land it higher on the list of movies released in the month of July. August 1989, Batman tumbles to number 6 in the chart. Instant newcomer Parenthood, starring Steve Martin and Keanu Reeves, takes the top spot of August, fighting off James Cameron's The Abyss.
Your submarine went down. Your company has authorized the Navy's use of this facility for a rescue.
My people are not qualified for this. We're oil workers.
The Abyss had some revolutionary special effects that James Cameron brought to the viewers. Unfortunately, people just didn't care about this movie, so he took those special effects over to Terminator 2 in 1991. Turner and Hooch shoots up into second place in August, probably due to its take the whole family vibe that Disney hopes for, and it worked, grossing $42 million in August 1989. It stood head and shoulders above K9, which was released earlier in this year. Other newcomers were the overrated cult classic Uncle Buck.
How come?
It's an even longer story.
Are you my dad's brother?
I'm your dad's brother, all right.
Buck Russell had always been the black sheep of the family.
I'm stunned that I'm related to you.
Brought to you by John Hughes. I never liked this one much, but I know it's a favourite with others. If I compare the comedy in this to that of Planes, Trains and Automobiles, I find this one lackluster, to say the least. It does, however, have charm and a heartwarming story. Now, one of the weirdest decisions of a release date I have ever seen in my lifetime. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. This is released and splattered out in the month of August. This movie is an abomination and should have never been released or greenlit. It is one of the worst sequels to a beloved character I have ever seen. A desperate cactus sucking the life from this character yet another time. The failure of the Freddy's Nightmare TV show meant we audiences were sick of Freddy. Like I mentioned earlier, they reached the pinnacle with Part 4. The only way was down. I have no idea on this. I can't think of a reason behind it, besides poor ticket sales to an oversaturated choice of movies, maybe, and the trends at the time. We have seen these periods where things are in and when things are out. At that time, horror was out. Producer Bob Shea kept the budget small on A Nightmare on Elm Street. He knew that he had to build an empire, and he knew that he could do it on a low budget and people would just pay it. So he got cocky, and because of this is why this film suffered. The makeup on Robert Englund in this movie is horrific. Like, it looks so far gone compared to the first movie. You can tell that Robert Englund had said, I want to be in the makeup as minimal as possible, because he still looks normal. He looks likeable. He looks marketable. It looks like kids could like him. This is so removed from the original fearsome, gruesome Freddy Krueger played by Robert Englund. Not this caricature, this puppet. And the world said, no, we don't want this shit anymore. And rightly so, and that was the last Nightmare on Elm Street that we got. Good. Did we get Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare? Yeah, of course we did, but this was the last Nightmare on Elm Street that we got. So, awful. Awful. I have to say this because it is awful. The whole point of this video is so we don't make the same mistakes and make shit. Movies that didn't get the notoriety in 1989, in August, were movies like Casualties of War.
And the producer of The Untouchables.
Hey, Sarge, you gotta give me a minute here on this thing we're doing. This, Sarge? This is nuts.
With Michael J. Fox and Sean Penn. This is a phenomenal movie. With so much heart. So much sorrow. And it gets squashed in the middle of a horrible month of movies that nobody even remembers it. Unless you're a movie fan. Nobody really went to see it because there were so many of us to choose from, and I bet they were disappointed. Another one worth mentioning is Lock Up with Sylvester Stallone and Donald Sutherland. This is a paint by numbers prison, wrongfully likeable main star is in jail, and you've got some dodgy guards and they're keeping him in, beating him up, same old shit. It's good, but it's not amazing, and you can see the decline of Sylvester Stallone in this film. His popularity was diminishing, and you can see this from movies like Over the Top and what comes after this, Rocky V and Oscar. He just was not pulling in the numbers, and Stop on Mom Will Shoot. So we know that there was a run of movies with Sylvester Stallone that just did nothing at the box office, and Lock Up is one of them. September 1989. This is the month for Universal Pictures to clean up at the box office, with 3 movies all in the top spots. We have Sea of Love with Al Pacino, a mediocre movie in comparison to some of his others, yet it reaches the top spot. We still have Parenthood and Uncle Buck dominating the charts during this quieter month for cinema goers. A new entry from the high-kicking kickboxer Jean-Claude Van Damme in the movie Kickboxer, released September 8th, with a better reception than the garbage he released earlier in the year, which was Cyborg. This movie really catapults Van Damme into the mainstream of Hollywood stardom. This has a higher production feel to it than any other of its other movies coming previous to that, and we can see that with the budget. This man can bring in the dollars. There is not much to say about the month of September.
And who are you gonna call?
It has become stale with steady, predictable, lower budget movies being released in this month. What surprises me the most is the big movies like Lethal Weapon 2 and Batman are already out of the theatres in terms of being in the top 40. This did not happen to Rain Man. That movie grew month on month and remained in the top 10 for a longer time than either of these two. So what does this tell us? The wave of Lethal Weapon 2 and Batman was faster. Word of mouth was positive and everybody was on a high, rather than a slow build up to success. A quick flash before your eyes, flood of ticket sales, and the audiences were looking for more. More comedy, it seemed. Comedy was everywhere. It was king.
Imagine a future where you're flying in style, and that style is with ezmaniac. Let him take you on a journey of discoverment and adventures as you fly across the Atlantic. With onboard staff always willing to entertain and go the extra high mile for you. Enjoy the onboard entrees and take part in the parents' after-dark services when the kids have gone to bed. Traveling has never been so thrilling. Start flying without trying. Fly ezmaniac Airways.
October 1989, the Halloween season. Released towards the end of September, I forgot to mention the disappointing Black Rain, starring Michael Douglas. There, I mentioned it. If you like this movie, put it in the comments. Now moving forward with October, Black Rain moves into the number 2 spot of the highest grossing movies of October. What a still lineup we have. Let's mention it because we have to. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers.
Harry, somebody dug up a coffin.
When are they going to realize that she is not him? She's just a child.
And that she attacks her stepmother. That's why they fear her. You're afraid the whole thing might start to happen again. You never saw his eyes. You never saw that nothing.
Released October 13th. Probably the right time, I'd say, to give it a few weeks before Halloween itself on the 31st. Smart move. More people likely to see it in October than in November would be my guess. Unless you're a horror fan. Another failure in horror was the movie Shocker, with a budget of 10 million and only scraping by with 16 million. The profits were low if any. And yet another horror character slipping through the net in the season of horror, remember. The movie that stole everyone's dollars in October was the smash hit comedy Look Who's Talking. This movie blew everyone away because it had never been done before.
It's the most natural thing in the world.
Oh, no. How could this have happened?
Starring Bruce Willis as the voice of the baby, and Travolta and Kirstie Alley as the two romantically trying to raise this child in this novelty movie, Look Who's Talking. This movie was good in its time. However, they tried to do it again with a sequel and then a third movie with animals. The concept got old quickly. I cannot think of any other movies that have tried it since. What it did do was show us that comedy was still the king of 1989. Sleeper hit movies like Johnny Handsome, starring Mickey Rourke, and the one weekend box office dud An Innocent Man, starring Tom Selleck.
We identified ourselves as police officers. He then pulled a gun and fired.
Oh, he's armed, Danny!
This guy's armed with a hairdryer. I just fired to protect myself.
True that you planted both the drugs and the gun in this country before they throw you into prison.
They admitted to me that they framed Jimmy.
You have been found guilty.
You know I'm innocent. I love you!
Guilty at Oroville, California.
He's an innocent man, framed.
In the plastic bag.
Now he must do whatever it takes to survive.
The month of October was a dull one. Surprisingly, what was to follow in November can hopefully redeem this. November 1989. If you are still watching, things are about to get more exciting at the box office. Eddie Murphy, being able to do no wrong, gets to direct the new entry for November 1989, Harlem Nights, alongside Richard Pryor.
In 1938, the nights belonged to Harlem. The place to be was Club Sugar Ray's.
With mixed reviews, this stylistic movie came third in the month of November against the one we've all been waiting for. Released November 22nd. and so welcomed after the last 2 months of duds, we get to see Michael J. Fox back as Marty McFly. This time with a more incredible, crazy story and the conclusion commercial shoved right in for part 3 at the end. This was a back-to-back part 2 and 3. This was one that was technically the most clever out of the 3 of them. The story is ridiculous, but Zemeckis makes it believable by carrying the heart and soul of the first one and picking up right after it. We feel no bumps or transitions of the 4 years. It feels natural. Back to the Future 2 is a great movie. It's silly in parts, but overall, I watched this the other day. It's just a fun, wild, time-traveling trip. You get to go everywhere in this film. So I suggest you watch it if you've never seen it before. At number 1 we still have the hit comedy Look Who's Talking. People had intrigue in this movie. November 17th we get the Disney classic The Little Mermaid. More focused on girls and boys at this point, the box office for Disney was daring to say the least, and it took away the 5th spot of November. Other animated classics released during the month of November was the United Artists movie All Dogs Go to Heaven.
The acclaimed director of 2 of the most popular animated films of all time now takes you on his most magical adventure ever. All Dogs Go to Heaven. Ever came back.
Shut up! I'm alive!
The story of a canine con artist.
Now let's talk about Steel Magnolias. Every once in a while we get a movie like this, a sisterhood. A female-driven movie which doesn't involve huge special effects or a proton pack, or endorsing it with a popular theme song. Steel Magnolias captivated the world with its American dream portrayal of a small Louisiana town. People flocked to the theatres just like they did the year before to see Beaches, only this time it's with Julia Roberts and an all-star cast, and a very nice, quaint, yet tragic story. If you've not seen Steel Magnolias, I recommend you watch it. It's a good movie, it's heartwarming, and it makes you feel like you're part of a family. Finally, December 1989, the biggie. With a huge year of sequels and franchises, we have the final month of the year to pick apart and see what came out and what destroyed what at the box office one final time. So at number 2, we have Back to the Future 2, taking a whopping $45 million during the month of December. Newcomer Tango and Cash.
Meet Ray Tango. He likes money. Meet Gabe Cash. 2 of LA's top rival cops. But they're going to have to work together.
I don't remember, okay?
Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell. Tango and Cash.
A buddy cop thrown together because of the success of Lethal Weapon enters at number 6, taking home a modest $17 million in comparison to Back to the Future Part 2.
Tango and Cash.
Kids could not watch this violent yet silly attempt of the buddy cop scenario. Who remembers Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile? I do. Who wants to see Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner and Danny DeVito again, folks? But playing new people in a completely different movie. The world does. And it enters at number 3 in the month of December. Not an easy task to do when you have the number 1 Christmas movie of all time released on December 1st.
After vacationing across America and throughout Europe, this holiday season, the Griswolds are going to play it safe. They're staying at home.
Better, Clark?
All Clark wants is a quiet, old-fashioned Christmas. What he's going to get is the gift that keeps on living, his family.
We didn't come to impose.
But no holiday could ever be more deeply touching, so genuinely moving, more truly uplifting, or more down-to-earth than Christmas with the Griswolds. This year, let Chevy Chase light up your holidays. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You'll crack up.
National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. USA went crazy for this movie, starring Chevy Chase and Randy Quaid. This movie's played every year without fail since the day it was released. In polls, this is classed as the number 1 Christmas movie of all time. The everyday man wants to put his Christmas lights on his house and make his Christmas special. It is a simple story about family, pride and looking good. It is funny, charming, of its time, timeless, gorgeously filmed and warm. It is a must-watch to get you in the spirit. A movie worth mentioning which slipped under the radar for most was Steven Spielberg's movie Always. When people think about movies about ghosts, they think about Patrick Swayze, but this movie got there first in December 1989, just before Swayze in 1990. The problem is nobody cared about it like they did with the Whoopi Goldberg romantic thriller. Released December 22nd and making barely anything during December, was Born on the 4th of July. This went on to make its money in the month of January. Driving Miss Daisy is released, all with what feels like Oscar attempts during the month of December. These classics went on to continue into 1990, but as an entry, it grossed a mere $1 million at the box office, released on December 15th. It enters at 23 on the box office chart of December. Same with Glory, released December 14th, grossing only $329,000 at the box office, but eventually taking home $26 million.
Dan, you were at Antietam.
Yes.
A great and a terrible day. Fitted your name to be commissioned colonel of the 54th Massachusetts Infantry.
Dear Mother, the men learn very quickly. Up their freedom.
1911.
1,000,001.
Marching is probably all they'll ever get to do.
When?
Here they come!
I know, because I dug the grave. Long time, and you let us head on up there where the real fight is. We want them to know that we...
The trend was to see these in January, and it feels like history repeating itself from the year before, with Tom Cruise starring in Rain Man in December, and taking the box office for the first 3 months of 1989. The release of Born on the 4th of July looks like they wanted to strike again. To conclude, 1989 was a world-changing year, with franchise starters like Batman stealing the box office for the entire year. The world changed after 1989. No other year compares to it in terms of blockbuster movies. The use of familiarity and logos and theme tunes, the cinema goer had a blast.
And who are you gonna call?
People cannot believe that you got to see Batman, Ghostbusters 2, Lethal Weapon 2, Parenthood, Uncle Buck, Karate Kid 3, all in a short period, and so many more. People were lucky. People did not know it, because no other year compares to 1989. It was the end of a decade. It was the end of a trend. Hollywood had to change their tack if they were to release so many highly anticipated sequels to such big hard-hitting movies. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something. I know that I did. I learned that 1989 was the year of the sequel.
And who are you gonna call?
Turn on the AC. It's Angel Caruso.